How many of you have enemies? Oh, I see one person does. 2, 3. Right? You don't have any enemies?
I don't think it is.
I do. That's what most people say. That we really don't have enemies. So what is this lesson going to teach us? Well, not much, because we don't have anybody to love, then we don't have anybody to love. No, that's not true. This saying of Jesus is kind of a revolution. You'll remember how this story started out back in Genesis in the garden, and Adam and Eve had 2 sons, Cain and Abel. And you'll remember what happened to Cain and Abel. Cain slew Abel. Is that right? Yes, right. I always get them backwards. And we kind of went downhill after that, for century after century after century, killing off our enemies left and right. And we got to tribal stage, and in the tribal stage, if somebody in your tribe did something to me, my tribe would go and wipe out your whole tribe. So it's a pretty ugly world out there. And along came an idea that was the next revolution about how we treat each other, and the idea was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's kind of embedded in our Constitution. It's called the punishment fitting the crime. So now we don't wipe out everybody else's family if they do something to you. So we have an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But the next big revolution doesn't take anyone's life. The next revolution is love your enemy, do good to those who abuse you, and so forth, as we heard in this morning's gospel. Now, Jesus offers us a few examples of how we might do that, and one is to turn the other cheek, the other is to give your shirt away, and most people think that's kind of wimpy. That's not really what Jesus is saying, is it? Well, it really isn't. We tend to avoid this, and I need a guinea pig. Can you stand up here? So we're in the first century, and in the first century there were slaves and there were masters, and so if my slave did something wrong, I would give him a backhand across the face. Jesus says to him, turn the other cheek. You see what happened? I can't backhand him. The only thing I can do is slap him, and that means he and I are equals. It's challenging him to a duel, or he's challenging me to a duel. So this isn't wimping out at all. This is saying, I and we are equals. Okay, thank you. Now, the next one, I won't ask anybody to take off their shirt. Because, good call. Yeah, well, you'll find out it's even better. So, people in Palestine were really poor. The Romans had come in and they sucked them dry. Maybe 80% were taken away in taxes. So it was so bad that people would own property for centuries from their family, couldn't afford to pay the taxes on it, and they lost it. So wealthy Romans would come along and they would buy up the land. And we hear in the Gospels stories of these wealthy owners taking off and leaving the tenant farmers in the vineyard. So we know that this existed. If you were really poor, about the only thing you had was your shirt and your cloak. And if you got hauled into court for paying a debt and couldn't pay it, the first thing that went was your cloak. Now there was a little bit of tenderness here, because in Palestine, their nights are cool, and if you You needed your cloak at night. So the law said that if somebody took your cloak in court, he had to give it back to you for the night. So you had to get your coat back for the night so you could sleep and be warm, but then you had to turn your coat over in the morning. Jesus says, let's carry this a little further. This is totally unjust. Let's make it look even worse. So if they ask for your cloak, give them your shirt, your underwear. You give them your shirt, and there you stand naked in front of the court. And being naked in that culture was a real taboo. You just didn't do it. It was a total shaming of yourself, but in this case, it was also shaming the person to whom you were giving your shirt. So you two had to figure out how you were going to be together. Was he going to continue to shame you for standing naked in the middle of the thing, or is he finally going to give it all back to you? You see, Jesus, you might think that there's a trick here, and that it's kind of pushing against the other person in not very kind ways, but someone said to me this week, no, it's more like holding up a mirror. You hold up a mirror to the guy who is punishing you or slapping you in a way that it shows him how unjust he is, and binds you, the two of you, back together as brothers. I don't know how many of you are Star Trek fans, but there's an episode in Star Trek where Data is an android, a very smart android, and he's kind of a cute android and very shy, but he's very, very smart. And a visitor comes to the Enterprise, and this visitor is the intergalactic champion of a game, and a computer game which is made of holographs. It's really kind of cool. And he challenges, and Data challenges him to a game, because everybody on the Enterprise knows that Data always wins, because he's the smartest person around. Well, they get about 2 minutes into the game, and he's lost. And Data, being a very quiet person and a very thoughtful person, went away to think. And he came back and he said, okay, let's play again. So they started playing, and they're playing, and the game is going on and on and on, and this great champion gets so frustrated, he says, I'm done with this, and quits the game. So the crew says to Data, how did you do that? He said, I didn't play to win. Because if you play to win, he knows how to get to you. So I played not to win. I changed the rules. Love your neighbor. Love your enemy. Jesus changed his rules. He changes how we're to live together, how we're to be together in this world. My colleague was a rugby player in college. And I didn't know this about rugby because I never watched rugby. But he told me that the game isn't over, the rugby game isn't over, until you all go and have a meal together, both teams. You can scrap all you want to on the field, but at the end, you all come together. You are brothers. You're not opponents. I think that's a good metaphor for the church. Because out there, it's pretty scrappy. There's some tough days. And some days you lose and some days you win. But you come in here, and that table there is for everyone. No one is excluded. We're all brothers and sisters at that table. And so you who are here and you who are guests know that that table is for you as well today. That's how we hold this world together in a game changer. Not to win, not to lose, but to be all winners. And God blesses us. He gives us the talents to make that happen in this world. And we come here each week to practice it. So be of good cheer, Jesus said at one point. I have overcome the world. I changed the game. So be it. Amen.